Hi everybody, welcome back to Marie's Kitchen. I'm so glad you're here. Today we're making a homemade all butter pie crust by hand. While I do have a number of videos showing how to make a pie crust in a food processor, which is my favorite method, I do think it's important to know how to make a pie crust by hand. And of course, I know there are a lot of people who don't have food processors or stand mixers, so this video is for you. And while pie crust is thought to be pretty intimidating, my goal today is to show you that anyone can make a flaky, homemade, all butter pie crust anytime, anywhere, without any equipment. Let's get started. First up, we'll measure out the flour, and I'm using all-purpose flour. We're going to measure out 1 1/4 cup, so it's 170 grams, or 1 1/4 cup flour. So we'll add that to our bowl here. Next step is anywhere from 1 teaspoon to 1 tablespoon sugar. I usually use 1 tablespoon, but since I'm going to probably use this crust for a quiche, which is savory, I'm going to have it be a little less sweet and just use 1 teaspoon of sugar. Sugar is important for both flavor. It kind of balances out the flavors in the pie crust, a little bit of salt, and then we're actually going to use some baking powder, so sugar's there to balance. And then it also helps with browning of the crust. So if you completely omit the sugar, you might end up with a really pale crust. Next is 1/2 teaspoon baking powder, and baking powder gives your crust a little bit of structure. So if you've ever had a crust that's come out really tough on the bottom, this is going to help with that. It's going to puff it up a little bit so it won't be so hard. It also gives the sides a little bit of lift. So I think it's really a game changer. It's one of my favorite ingredients. We're going to use 1/4 teaspoon salt. And that's it. Next step, we need our cold unsalted butter. It's 1 stick, 1/2 cup, or 113 grams. And I do keep that in the refrigerator until I'm ready to use it, so I'm gonna go get it now. The reason we keep the butter in the refrigerator is because you always want to have cold butter when you're making a pie crust. And those little pieces of butter in the pie crust that are nice and cold, when we put those in the oven and they melt, they're going to release steam, and that's what's going to give your crust some flakes. So without those cold pieces of butter, you're not going to have the flakes. So since we're making this by hand, I'm going to cut this into some pieces here. It doesn't have to be anything precise. And then we'll just toss these in, scatter them in to our dry mixture. My goodness. You know my parrot, Gracie, she's over here walking around, and she's walking over by the dog bowl while the dog's trying to eat. And the dog won't go eat while the bird's over by the bowl. So per usual, it is a complete circus over here. Okay, so we've got our butter mixed in, or just in with the dry ingredients. Now we're just gonna take our hands and kind of mash these up, break them up. Now you're trying to get these into pieces about no bigger than an almond. The reason is if you have a big piece like a walnut-sized piece of butter, when that melts in the oven, it's going to create a pool of butter, and that's just going to kind of be a greasy mess. So I have really nice butter pieces mixed in here with the flour. You can see there's no like real big pieces. It looks great. So the next step, I'm going to use 4 tablespoons of water and 1 tablespoon vodka. The vodka helps reduce the amount of gluten in the crust. If you don't have vodka, then you can just use 5 tablespoons water. Okay, so that's 4 tablespoons, and then we'll add 1 more tablespoon of the vodka. And then we're just going to drizzle that in. And then I'll take my fork and just kind of move this around in the water. The goal is to get everything a little bit wet without really mixing and activating more gluten. The more you mix these ingredients, the more the gluten in the flour will become more activated and stronger. And you don't want that in a pie crust. You want really short strands of gluten. Okay, so this looks good. We've got our butter and water mixed in together. Now, let me give my hands a rinse. Now we'll need some saran wrap, or this is called Glad Press and Seal. It's like saran wrap, but a little bit easier to work with. I'll just take a big piece like this, and then we'll simply dump our pie crust down onto the plastic wrap. Now I know this looks pretty dry, but if you do take some in your hand and squeeze it together, it is going to hold together like a pie crust. And you want to make sure you can kind of nudge it around and it doesn't go anywhere. If it does just start falling apart, then you want to drizzle in a tiny bit more water. But if you use my measurements, you really shouldn't need to add any more water. Now I'm just bringing this together with the plastic wrap. This is my no mess method. Okay, so there's your pie crust in your saran wrap or plastic wrap. And then I'm just gonna press that into a disc, twist the top like this, and then there you have your homemade all butter pie crust made by hand. You can see the pieces of butter in there. Now this goes in the refrigerator for at least 30 minutes, and best is maybe an hour, 2 hours. You can also make this ahead. So if you want to make it today and then use it tomorrow, that's great. Overnight in the refrigerator is great. You can make it up to 2 days in advance. So leave it in the refrigerator for 2 days. Now, if you do want to make it more in advance, then just throw it in your freezer. You can leave it in your freezer for up to 3 months. When you're ready to use it, take it out of your freezer, leave it in the refrigerator overnight, and it'll thaw there. Then you're ready to roll it out. Okay, put this in the fridge. The reason we do leave it in the fridge is for 2 reasons. One is to let the gluten rest again. Again, we don't want those really tight strands of gluten. We want them to be nice and relaxed. So then when we roll it out, it stays nice and rolled out and will fit easily into our pie plate. The other reason is let the butter firm up again. We were using our hands to cut the butter into the flour, so it definitely warmed up, and now we want to chill it again so we keep those pieces of butter cold when we go to roll it out. All right, see you back here in about 30 minutes and we'll roll out the crust. All right, it's been about 30 minutes. So I'm gonna grab the crust out of the refrigerator. That feels good. It's still pretty soft, which is okay. So we'll take this out of our saran wrap. Then you'll just need a little bit of flour. We're gonna put that on the mat here. And we'll put a little on our rolling pin. And if it feels a little sticky, you can put some on your hands. Now, the first thing I'm gonna do is just press it out with my hands like this. And basically what I'm doing is just doing some of the rolling with my hands before I get the rolling pin out. It's easy to keep it in a nice round shape. You can see I've been making a lot of pies because I have burns all over me. I keep hitting the shelf, you know, the shelf of the oven. I need to just move it out of the way. I don't know why I don't do that. My son said, "Hey Mom, what if I invented something that went just on the edge of that oven shelf, like a silicone little cover?" I said, "That's a good idea. Then if I hit it, I wouldn't burn myself." He's always coming up with ideas. Now we'll take a rolling pin and again, make sure there's a little on top, there's a little underneath. You really don't want your pie crust to stick to the mat or the counter. If it does stick, say you roll it all out and then you realize the whole thing's stuck, you pretty much have to ball it up and start over. It's really hard to get a stuck pie crust off the counter. It's one of the biggest problems I see in my pie classes. So do want you to be aware of that. So flour is one thing that can help with that. And the other thing is this method of rolling that I'm going to show you right now. So when we roll the crust, you're going to roll and then turn. And if you turn every time, you'll prevent it from sticking. Or if it is about to stick, you'll feel it and you can slip a little flour under there. And of course, the other reason is that it's gonna help you keep this in a nice round shape. If you're just trying to roll it like this, sometimes your crust will come out real lopsided and then it's hard to fit in the plate. So this is another great way to help keep your crust nice and round. This is looking great. You can see pieces of butter in here. Now, how do you know when to stop rolling? You want to take your pie plate, and this is the basic 9-inch Pyrex. That's what I love to use. And you're going to set it on top of your crust like this to measure. And you want to have about 2 inches all the way around. That much is going to give you enough to fit all the way through the pie plate and then have a nice thick edge on the rim. This looks good, so I'm just going to fold it over like that, and then we'll simply set the pie crust right in the center where it says Pyrex, and then unfold it like that. Now this just fits right down into the pie plate. You just set it in there. See, I'm just setting it. I'm not pulling it down or pulling it up. You just set it down. And then to create the edge, we'll take the edge overhang here. I don't cut any off. I like a nice fat edge. We'll take this edge overhang and just fold it under itself and rest it on the lip of the pie plate. If you don't have a pie plate with a lip on it, if it's just a flat edge, I would get another pie plate. I really do like having the lip there. It helps hold the crust in place, so it just looks really nice. If you have just a straight up edge, then the crust tends to just sink right back down. Now here's one thing I don't love. It's where you have a big piece of butter right on the edge of the crust. That can melt, and it will just melt down the side of the crust. So sometimes what I'll do is take a little bit of flour and just pop that right on top of that, and that helps absorb some of that butter. Okay, there we go. There we have our homemade all butter pie crust fitted into our pie plate. Now, what we do next will depend on what type of pie you plan to make. So if you plan to make a, let's say, chicken pot pie where you're gonna put the filling in this pie crust and then add a top crust, then you don't want to add a decorative edge at this point. You can add a decorative edge after you add your second pie crust. If you want to make a quiche where you don't have a top crust on top, then you can go ahead and make the decorative edge, and I'll show you how to do that. So for that, what I like to do is use my knuckle and 2 fingers, and you just press the crust in between your knuckle and 2 fingers, like this. So you press it, and I like to make a nice, fat, round flutes like that. This is what my mom taught me, so it's what I do. So here is our all butter homemade pie crust in the pie plate with a decorative fluted edge. Not too hard, right? I know you can do it. I just truly believe that anyone can learn to make a pie crust. Even if you have no baking or cooking experience, you can do this, and it's so much fun and so satisfying and so wonderful. What a gift to share around the holidays. So I hope you'll give this a try. If you have any questions that I didn't answer, leave those in the comments below. I love to answer your questions. And if there's a pie you want to see, also leave that in the comments below. I'm always looking for suggestions. If you like this video, be sure to, oh, there's Gracie girl. Okay. Be sure to give it a thumbs up. And also hit the subscribe button if you haven't yet. I have more easy cooking videos just like this, and I don't want you to miss any of them. For this recipe and more, head over to my website, 𝗜𝗡𝗦𝗧𝗏.com. There you can print this recipe and all my recipes, and if you like, put them in a notebook and make your very own Marie's Kitchen cookbook for free. Oh, and one more thing to add. The most common question I get when I do a pie crust video is, well, you didn't tell us what temperature to bake it. And that's because it depends on the type of pie that you're making. If you're making a cold custard pie, like chocolate cream or coconut cream, you'll have to blind bake the crust in the oven, which means baking the crust without any filling. And I have instructions for that on my website. I also have a video on blind baking pie crust, so you can check that out. So how you bake the pie crust depends completely on the pie that you're making. So I'm gonna stop here in this video. My goal is just to show you how to make the pie crust, put it in your pie plate, and have this decorative edge ready to go. What I'm going to do is I'll use this for a quiche. And in the meantime, I'm going to wrap this up in saran wrap or plastic wrap, and you double wrap it, and then you can leave that in the freezer for up to 3 months. And so anytime you want to make a quiche, you have a pie crust ready to go. You just pull it out of the freezer, bake from frozen. It's wonderful. So this is such a great thing to have in the freezer. Truly my favorite. As far as going straight from the freezer to the oven, a lot of people have asked about what about the Pyrex pie plate, if it's cold in the freezer, going to hot in the oven. I've never had an issue with it. So definitely only do what you're comfortable with. But what I do to take care to protect or kind of minimize the heat change is to, for one thing, when you take it out of the freezer, let it sit on the countertop for maybe 5 or 10 minutes as you're filling it, and that takes some of the chill out. The other thing I always do, whenever I bake a pie or pie crust, you always want to bake it on a parchment-lined baking sheet. And that also reduces the heat change. It's not having a cold pie plate sitting directly on the hot shelf. So this helps a lot. So if any other questions, let me know. My goal is to always give you some really easy recipes that turn out great every time, so you can build some confidence in the kitchen and feel really inspired to share good food with people that you love. From my kitchen to yours. Thank you.